Hello and welcome to Bristol. This is a great city full of amazing sights and lovely people. How do I know? Well, I've lived here for most of my life and now I want to take you on a tour. We're going to go together to some of the places that the tourists go and some that they don't. And I'm going to be talking to the people of Bristol to find out what they think of their city. And what better place to start than here at the harbour side.
We've all become very fond of the old docks. They rival anything that the rest of Europe has got to offer, and thousands of people enjoy them. There's no better way to see them than from the water, and my old friend Rob Salvage is giving me a ride on his favourite boat, Margaret. This is the smallest in the fleet run by his Bristol ferryboat company, which provides a regular service for commuters and tourists alike. I've known Rob since he was in short trousers, and he still is. We used to sit next to each other in Cottam School. I was form captain, now he's the skipper. Mind you, a lot has changed around here since we were boys. The docks have shrugged off their grimy industrial image and have become a place for families and visitors. It's full steam ahead to the Industrial Museum, which stands behind these old cranes. Here on Prince's Wharf, they've tried to remind us of what life was like here, right up to the 1970s when the docks finally closed for business. You can look up at the cranes, take a stroll past the exhibits, and even hitch a ride on the trains. They're all driven, stoked, stroked, maintained and cared for by teams of dedicated volunteers. The cranes are not only landmarks, they really work, and they're all part of the museum, which is housed inside an old loading shed.
We are able to show a very wide variety of things here, and the broader the better, I think. Everyone will find something that interests them, and we are only really reflecting the huge variety of industry that there has been in Bristol over the last 200 or 300 years. Huge range of things made here.
The nice thing about it is that it's hands-on. You can clamber on things, or just look.
Their favourite thing is the big green double-decker bus. And they all like it, I think, largely because you can go on it. These are very often people who would never set foot on a bus in normal circumstances. So it's quite unusual, but they also like the Concorde cockpit, which is a real thing. It was part of the kit really used to develop the aircraft back in the 1960s and 70s.
And how about this? They even put on reenactments on the quayside, so you can see what it was like to unload a ship the hard way, when cargo came in small boxes and not great containers. Cargo ships used to come here from all over the world, making some people in the city rich. In fact, for a long time, Bristol was the second most important port in the country.
It's nice just to try and just sort of bring people's minds back to why we've got this delightful piece of water in the middle of the city and what it was that brought about all this open land that's available for people to now live on and enjoy themselves. And I think it's good that at least part of that port should survive. Not least just because, you know, I have a job in it, but it is a nice thing to remind people of, and it certainly is something that's key to certainly the last 12 or 13 generations of Bristolians, I should think.
Time to get back on the Margaret with Rob. He's rather well known round here as a broadcaster, but gave up his full-time radio show to run the Bristol Ferryboat Company.
I love this particular boat we're on. It's got a lot of history. It worked as a ferry boat, carrying workers backwards and forwards just a bit further down the river for many years. It's a great privilege to be part of the continuing heritage of taking people around this great city. So much history here. What I like about it is it's not packaged in a particularly kind of sophisticated way, but a lot of people nowadays are being attracted to come here, and then they're discovering for themselves the gems that we've got to offer, and I really like that. It's nice.
Rob, you sound like a man who loves his job.
Yeah, I do. It's fantastic.
And you know he really means it. It must be something in the water. We're sailing west, past the blocks of posh new flats and apartments which have sprung up round here as the old industry has made way for trendy waterside living. We're about to land at the old haunts of Isambard Kingdom Brunel, the genius who played a defining role in the development of Bristol. He was a man who was only just over 5 feet tall, but there was nothing small about what he did in this dockyard or anywhere else. I'm getting off to look round one of his technical marvels, a wonder of the Victorian age, the SS Great Britain.
It's taken more than 30 years of hard graft to get the SS Great Britain looking like this. I remember when she was brought back to Bristol from the Falklands in 1970. She looked like a floating skip, to be honest. Now, she looks magnificent.
Passionate people have brought the ship back to life and given visitors the chance to see and feel what she was like when she was launched from here in 1843. Then, she was the heaviest ship in the world. Thank goodness for power steering.
How unusual was the SS Great Britain when she was launched?
Right, she was the first ship made of iron with a propeller to go across any ocean of the world. And when she was built, she was the largest ship in the world. She is 322 feet long, weighed 3,500 tons. Not just the largest ship, practically the largest metal object. Definitely the largest moving object ever built 160 years ago.
Philippe, your first visit to the SS Great Britain, can I ask you what you think it is?
She's really great ship.
I think we're amazed at the sheer size of the ship. That's the incredible thing about it, and the sheer sort of sense of achievement that they did it so long ago. And you know, here we are standing on this special thing.
What do you think is the most stunning part about it, if you like?
Well, I would say, personally, is the dining room down below.
Yes, you don't get much more elegant than this. The first-class dining salon has been renovated in graceful 1840s style.
Hi, what do you think of the ship? It's nice, isn't it? She's a quiet one.
And as you can see, they've tried to recreate the atmosphere, though luckily not the smells of those voyages. The SS Great Britain was never the smoothest of rides.
This isn't just Bristol's heritage or our national heritage. This is international heritage. Every ship that is at sea today is a descendant of this one. This is the transitional ship between sail and steam. The transitional ship between the wooden construction and the modern metal. The forerunner of all modern ships. Back in the dock which was purpose-built to build it.
I fancy even Brunel would be amazed that his ship's been preserved. He'd be even more astonished to see the view out of his old office window. And I wonder what he would say if you told him how much one of these flats sells for. That's Tony Bullamore's boat, the catamaran that took part in the round-the-world race. This has always been a place for adventure and exploration. 500 years before these houses were built, John Cabot sailed from here across the Atlantic to North America. But no tour would be complete without acknowledging that it hasn't all been good. However pretty it looks today, there have been some ugly times, and we should not forget that slave boats sailed from here on their ghastly missions to Africa and the Caribbean. Today the docks are far more benign, a place where you can have a drink in the many waterside pubs. There are places to linger over a meal, or you can just sit around on the steps and have a chat. There's something of a leisure centre too. You can watch the little boats skim over the now clean water of the Avon. But this is no Disneyland. People actually work here too, and they still get their hands dirty. At the underfall yard, the old skills are being maintained.
Now, the nice thing about this place is that although it's very old, something like 125 years, it's still working. There are blacksmiths here, there are riggers here, they make new boats and they repair old ones.
Go into one of the sheds and you smell wood and glue and varnish. The work is varied. This is a 1930s racing yacht. She's in for her 75-year service.
It's a 22 square metre, which was some kind of measurement rule. And there's still a lot of around. It originated from Scandinavia, this type of boat.
And can you make it as good as new?
You can, if you want to, yeah. It's always a question, how far do you go? How much money do you want to spend on it?
What do you think about working in this yard?
It's fantastic. It's one of the nicest places in the docks, of course, and a beautiful view.
The water is always deep like this in the docks because it's sealed in by the locked gates. Otherwise, when the tide went out, everyone would be left high and dry. Now we've ventured through those gates at high water and we're heading down the Avon. A few miles further round the Horseshoe Bend and we'd be in Avonmouth. But we're not going that far on this tour. We're going up in the world, to the Clifton Suspension Bridge. The bridge is like an elegant necklace strung across the Avon Gorge, a jewel that's enticing and just a little bit dangerous. It hangs in mid-air as if by magic, rippling its muscles like an athlete while shouldering the weight of runners, walkers and 4 million cars a year. Not bad for a structure built in the age of the horse and cart, when dung, not exhaust fumes, was the main hazard.
One of the amazing things about the bridge is that it's in incredible condition, and engineers say it could stand here for another 1,000 years if it's looked after. Of course they look after it beautifully, and I've come to see just how they do that.
Nigel Neville is the top man when it comes to bridge maintenance. He knows every inch, each joint, and spends his days happily working a dizzying 245 feet above the River Avon. To see what he does, I need to get into the cradle which runs beneath the roadway, and that means going over the top. It's okay, just don't look down. This is a nightmare for me, but I'm not alone. Apparently some people can't even drive across the bridge. And even Nigel admits to the occasional wobble.
Do you find the heights scary or not?
At times, yeah. I mean, I've been actually walked the chains before now, and you get gusts of winds come up, and you got to be ever so careful what you do. I mean, so the conditions, and believe it or not, our measure of wind factor, there's a flag on top of Avon Gorge Hotel, and if that's blowing, we don't go up on the chains.
Going up on the chains is not something I would ever entertain. It means walking a tightrope across the gorge. These days, there are harnesses to keep the risk as low as possible, but it's not always been like that.
My initial task was to walk up through the tower, out onto the chain, and walk down with no safety at all. No harness, no hard hats, and that was my initiation test, and I was like you are now.
Thanks for giving the game away, Nigel. Perhaps we take the bridge for granted. Every day it serves its purpose carrying cars and pedestrians as they make the short journey from Clifton to Leigh Woods. On foot or by road, it would be a long trek without Brunel's masterpiece.
Well, this bridge takes something like 4 million cars a year, and it's in a very exposed place. What sort of hammering does it take?
Oh, it takes a hell of a hammering. So obviously, I mean, as you can imagine, from an inspection point of view, we've got to be really on top of the actual maintenance side of it, and we'll sort of look after the bridge itself, yeah.
We look up to see the bridge, but for the man in charge, looking down is just as important. The structure is anchored by giant chains that run deep into the earth. John Mitchell is the bridge master, and he takes his hat off to the man who made this complex feat of engineering look so simple.
When the bridge was first built, after the competition, and when we first started to build the bridge, it was said to be the wonder of the age, or it was going to be the wonder of the age, and in fact, not only was it the wonder of that age, but I think it's the wonder of this age as well. It is so beautiful, it fits so well, it is unchanged virtually after all these years, and it'll go on into the future because the level of stress in the bridge is quite low, so the fatigue life will take it on a long, long time, maybe 1,000 years. Most bridges of this age have either disappeared or have been completely refurbished. This bridge, we have changed some bolts here and there. We've changed 2 of the cross girders, 2 out of 162. Basically, the rest is unchanged.
The bridge is rarely closed. A tornado in 1990 only damaged some of the railings, and in the 1880s some extremely high winds caused minor problems, but that's about it. And as well as being a functional bridge, it's a top tourist attraction, a piece of art in a beautiful setting.
Visitors, when they come, I think they're amazed that they can be in contact with the bridge. They can touch the towers, they can touch the girders. They get a feel for how massive it is and yet how delicate it is. They can feel it move. They are really in awe of it. And of course the views from the bridge are magnificent too.
The bridge is the gateway to the west, but it's also the spectacular front driveway into a very special district of Bristol, Clifton. The poet Sir John Betjeman decided that this is what Britain is all about. He declared it the finest suburb in England. Welcome to BS8, the postcode that automatically puts noughts on the price of your home. Royal York Crescent is highly sought after. You need to wave goodbye to a small fortune to live here, but it's worth it for these views.
But you know, it hasn't always been this posh. I was born around these parts in the late 1950s, and my parents rented a drafty old flat here. They tell me the walls were bowed because of bomb damage, and certainly as a boy I remember this area being full of derelict buildings.
A short distance away there's a tunnel of trees known as Birdcage Walk. It's a charming footpath through a slightly spooky churchyard.
Well, this is one of my favourite parts of Clifton. It's like being in a sort of time machine because you leave the hustle and bustle of the high street behind you there, and then suddenly you're in the middle of this wonderful Victorian churchyard, and yet move just 50 yards further on and you find yourself transported into the 1940s.
In the shadow of the War Memorial, a reminder of the Blitz.
And these are the ghostly remains of St Andrew's Parish Church, which was bombed by the Germans on the 24th of November 1940.
That night, a city of churches became a city of ruins. 200 people died in that one raid. 10,000 homes were destroyed or damaged. Luckily, the second Anglican church in Clifton, Christ Church, is still here. Its spire is the highest point in Bristol. There's a chapel too at Clifton College, just next to the cricket pitch. Old boys like John Cleese whacked a ball around here and learned to play up, and play the game. And in another of Clifton's magnificent squares, the old home of the Gloucestershire cricketer Dr. W.G. Grace.
Well, just as we're outside the good doctor's house, let me just tell you a little story about him. He was, of course, the most fantastic cricketer, but he didn't like being out much, particularly if it was for a duck. So occasionally he would just play on. Cheating? No. He took the view that the crowd would have been disappointed if they didn't see him play.
Fair enough then. But what would he have made of modern-day Clifton? A bustling village where the older Clifton residents mingle with young professionals and students and bump into each other in shops selling olives, designer kitchens and special sausages. In between the wine bars and the boutiques, this is the sort of busy community where nobody looks out of place, as long as you've got a bit of style.
I think it's a cosmopolitan lifestyle here, really. You've got a bit of the city and you've got a bit of the country right on your doorstep. And the people are very friendly up here.
I think it's just a quiet, more cosmopolitan centre than the centre of the city. So just nice for a drink in the evening and for wandering out on a Saturday like this.
It still has the sort of what it used to be, considered to be a village just outside Bristol. And it's still retained that, I think, too. So that's rather nice, I think.
And on a summer evening, there's a chance to catch some culture as Clifton College throws open its doors for the annual Prom on the Close. The West of England Philharmonic, Bristol's own orchestra, will be filling the sultry air with sweet music in a wonderful British scene. World-class music deserves a first-class picnic, champagne, salmon and smoked chicken, and polite shouts of more. A great place to observe the city is from Bristol's back garden, otherwise known as the Downs. High over the gorge, this is one of the few places where you can look down on the suspension bridge. And what better way of getting down to a lower level than this? A slab of rock shined by a billion Bristol bottoms into a wonderful slide. They've been doing it for generations, like grandfather, like grandson.
It's known as Fairyland, of course, around here. And, you know, I was about 10, I suppose, 8, 9, 10, that sort of age. And in school holidays, we used to just our playground, the whole area, you know, just to wander around. And it was perfectly safe in those days to do that.
You were encouraging your grandchildren down the slide. Most grandmas are saying,
oh,
steady
yes.
on, you were saying.
Oh, yes, yes. As long as you use your heel for a brake, you know, it's safe.
Ah, I wondered where I went wrong. You need fancy footwork on the Rock of Ages. Our day trip continues by bus. Not one of those modern ones. I'm waiting for a real bus, like the one I used to go to school on. That was in the days when Bristol had its own bus company, even if it was the butt of a million jokes.
Oh, Bristol buses, we dearly love you. In your British racing green, thundering through our glorious city, seldom heard and never seen.
Our driver Mike used to work on the buses in the days when a lot of people didn't have cars. Now he renovates them.
This bus is full, said the conductor. I said, how long will the next one be? He said, just the same as this one, exactly 26 foot free. And if you want the bus to Southmead and you wonder why it's late, it's 'cause the crew of the 720 are riding shotgun on the 8:10.
Mike, this is a wonderful old bus and it reminds us of so much of our past, but tell us a bit about it.
Sure, it's a Bristol-built bus. Bristol was quite unusual in having buses built in Bristol and running in Bristol. It's built in 1955. It's, as you see, a double-decker. One of over 250 of this type that ran in Bristol. So it's quite typical of Bristol in the 50s and 60s.
Still going today. What's she like to drive?
Oh, I love it. It's noisy, it's slow, it's ponderous, and I just love it.
And as the winter wind howls up the high street, for hours I faced the notice on the wall. It says they're running every 20 minutes, and that's the biggest ruddy joke of all.
Mike, was it true, all these problems with the Bristol Bus Company?
I know there were problems in the 60s because there were staff shortages, and that did lead to buses being missing, which probably led to the song.
But were people in Bristol affectionate about their buses, or were they infuriated by their buses, or what?
I think when you read the Evening Post, they were furious, but they thought they had the worst service. But I found when you went to other towns, they also thought they had the worst service, so everything was probably equal.
How important would the bus service have been to Bristolians?
Oh, very important. Certainly when I joined the company, there were just thousands of people who came out of work at, say, BAC, who relied upon the bus, and a large number of extra buses going to BAC just to pick people up and take them in for their shifts. Very important.
Yes, the city that built green buses also produced aircraft, and the most beautiful of all was Concorde. It was a collaboration with the French, and a project that came to an end here one grey, wintry day. November 2003, and through a heavy Bristol sky, the world witnesses the last flight of the last Concorde ever made. This is the final approach. Concorde is coming home to the place where it was built, the factory where engineers gave birth to the world's only supersonic airliner. Touchdown and mission accomplished. After 30 years outrunning the sun, now it is a museum piece. But even the surly bonds of Earth cannot take away the beauty of this plane. Stunning, delicate looks combined with brute force. The engines are technical marvels, but to us Bristol laymen, they're the big things that push Concorde through the sound barrier.
You know, Concorde carries 90 tons of fuel, but even now, pop some 4-star in her tanks, turn on the electrics, reactivate the hydraulics, and it could fly again. This is no antique. In fact, Concorde is still the most advanced passenger plane in the world. What does that one do? Which one? Third one in, yeah, that one's one.
Inside the cockpit, one of Concorde's engineers shows me the controls. These days, planes are full of computer screens. But don't forget, Concorde was designed in the 50s, when it was all done manually.
Frank, it's amazing just to be in the cockpit. Do you know what all these controls do?
Yes, I do. I know a lot of it, how it works as well. The technology that went into this aircraft, both from France and the UK, was amazing. And it pushed everything forward. I honestly don't think we would get the aircraft that are flying today in the standard they are unless it was for this aircraft.
100 passengers sat here sipping their champagne as Concorde travelled at twice the speed of sound on the edge of space. You can see how comfortable it looks, but what you can't sense is the smell of leather which hits you as soon as you walk into the cabin.
Let's tell you some secrets. The Queen always had seat 1A. Joan Collins would insist on 6A. But few passengers, famous or not, realised that Concorde grows bigger at Mach 2.
What happens is that this aircraft, when it's flying supersonic, it gets very, very hot. It's 127 degrees C is the maximum temperature the skin will reach. And it expands. And between the bulkhead and the circuit breaker panel, the gap moves open in supersonic flight. And apparently the flight engineer who sits there put his hat in at supersonic flight, and when he went to pull it out, and he landed and the aircraft had contracted again. He couldn't get it out. And they decided to leave it there for posterity.
Lynette Hopkins is one of many Bristolians who flew supersonic. There used to be pleasure flights from Filton, and for her, Concorde's demise is like a death in the family.
On that day, I was just so sad. Everything I wore was black because I was in mourning. And as she came in, my God, God cried as well, didn't he? Because the weather was atrocious. Everybody was sad on that day.
Concorde moved slowly down the runway for the last time, bowing to the crowds, not knowing that once the engines were turned off, they would never be restarted.
It's lovely to see an enthusiast, really. That it's an achievement as well for the people of Bristol, isn't it?
Absolutely, absolutely. As I say, all my family were involved, and I think most Bristolians are very, very proud of her.
Well, to the general public, of course, it is the part of Filton's history, yes. And it's very important. It's the last aircraft ever to be built at Filton. After 69 years of production, this was the very last aircraft ever to come out of the works.
And what do you think it says about the people who worked here at Filton?
I think the people who worked on Concorde faced massive problems of how to keep, the speed, the temperature and everything else. And the amazing amount of technology that went into it, it never ceased to amaze you when you look at what this aeroplane's got today that aircraft being produced today haven't got.
Concorde is only a machine, and yet it is so much more, and for many it lifts us out of ourselves towards the heavens.
Well, it was the ultimate way of travelling, wasn't it? The one and only aircraft ever in the world where you could travel at supersonic speeds as a passenger.
People loved this aircraft. I don't think there's anything else that the general population love in this country. I can't think of anything.
We miss her now. I mean, at 11 o'clock, quite often, if I hear a plane, I still think, oh, there's Concorde, and of course it isn't, but we're sort of praying to that, and I think we always will be.
People get emotional about this aircraft. I think it's in the hearts of Bristolians. Oh, I could set my watch by that. It used to come over our house and I used to wave to it. It's marvellous. It's been my life. I've slept, eaten, lived on it.
Back to our more everyday mode of transport. It's quite a thought that this bus was built when engineers were dreaming up Concorde. That's how far they were ahead of their time. I suppose Brunel started it all with his bridge and boats, and railways come to mention it. The Cumberland Basin is another feat of engineering, Bristol's answer to Spaghetti Junction, and easy to get lost. But drive on just a few hundred yards further and you're out in the country. We Bristolians can claim ownership of our own stately home. It's called Ashton Court and comes with a very nice house and a lot of ground.
For generations, the estate was owned by the Smith family, though they spelt it the posh way, with a Y. Then, during the last war, it was used by the RAF and the Americans, but after that it fell into disrepair until it was bought in 1959 by the City Council for the benefit of the people of Bristol.
And this is what it's become really well known for. It's Bristol's answer to Cape Canaveral, the launch pad for 1,000 balloons. Every August, the city hosts the biggest balloon fiesta in Europe. They fire them up just after dawn, breathing hot air into the canvas and making them fly. The fiesta was started more than 25 years ago by a Scotsman, Don Cameron, who has quite a confession to make.
When you're up in the air, what does it feel like inside for you?
It's always very difficult to say. Certainly I've got no head for heights. It's not like being on the roof of your house and looking over the edge. It just feels that you are that high and that everything in the world is small. So it's got a beauty to it, but it's not scary.
But you're one of the world's top balloonists, and you're saying that you don't like heights.
Well, that's true, but you don't feel high when you're in a balloon.
Well, this feels pretty high to me, Don. But he's right. Flying isn't scary, just the landing. And look at the views. No wonder Bristol people love this event.
You've been flying for a long time. How important is the Bristol Balloon Fiesta now?
It's the biggest event in the country, certainly, and probably the biggest balloon event in Europe. Balloonists just love coming here. It's well organised. We get to fly over the city. We have the challenge of the estuary to the north. It makes it interesting, and it's a great launch site. We've got a very sheltered launch site here at Ashton Court, so if it is breezy, we get a good chance to fly away quite comfortably during the inflation.
Bristol people really seem to turn out in their tens of thousands. Are you surprised at the level of support you get?
The people of Bristol know more about balloons probably than any other city in the world. They're very balloon literate. They'll probably look up, they won't be flying tonight, or yeah, they'll be flying tonight, let's go. They know about it, which is great.
And if balloons in the air are great, they're spectacular on the ground too. Time now for some down-to-earth entertainment, and we're off to Ashton Gate, famous home of the City, one of Bristol's 2 professional football clubs. Bristol Rovers supporters, look away now. This is City's inner sanctum, where fans clad in red come to worship on a Saturday. Who knows what drama will unfold between these immaculately drawn lines as the players battle for the approval of the crowd. Will they be cheered, applauded, booed, or abused? These terraces have seen and heard it all. At first sight, the ground takes some fans' breath away. You can get under the skin of the club on a tour, meeting the players, and even feeling their shirts. The entertainer Fred Wedlock likes to keep warm with a Bristol City scarf. He's got family links here. There's even a Wedlock stand. But once at Ashton Gate, He wasn't allowed to wear his red and white and had to slip into something he found a little less comfortable.
I played on here. Oh, yes. And photos to prove it, and film to prove it, and when he showed his games. And I had to wear a Bristol Rovers shirt, to my eternal shame. I've never scored either.
What is this about the rivalry between Rovers and City in Bristol?
Is there? No.
In Bristol, you're either born a pirate or a robin, but whether you support Bristol Rovers or Bristol City, football has been an important form of entertainment for the people of Bristol for a very long time. Bristol City have been here for 100 years, and the whole of Bristol is very proud of the players it's produced.
Perhaps the most successful of all is this man, who played not only for City, but for England, no fewer than 26 times.
Well, Fred, your grandfather, Billy, or Fatty Wedlock, is joining us here in a way in the stadium. Tell us about him.
In spirit, actually. Very similar to me. Very good-looking chap. 5'5" and slightly overweight.
And an amazing footballer.
He was, yes. He was born in about 1880 and he joined Bristol City in 1901. He played for England very shortly after, about 1905, I think. Won 26 international caps, of which I'm proud to say I'm wearing one.
They called him Fatty, but he was a good-looking fellow, wasn't he? And
He was actually. My daughters think he was a remarkably good-looking chap.
Quite an athlete, wasn't he?
Oh, he was indeed. India Rubber Man, that's what they called him. Played in South Wales for a while when he didn't quite make it Bristol City as a young man, and he made his mark in Aberdare, probably in several ways actually, because you notice tracing the family tree, there's a cluster of wedlocks all around the top of that valley.
Bit of a lad, was he?
A young, good-looking lad with a bicycle.
In those times, football stars didn't earn a lot, so when his playing days were over, Billy went to the bar.
He took a pub over opposite. It was called the Star, but it was always known as Wedlocks. And so in the 1980s, the brewery said, all right, let's officially name it Wedlocks. And so we had a bit of a ceremony, and that's what it became. And then a bit later on, they were rebuilding bits of the ground, and somebody said, well, why don't we have a Wedlock? We've got an Attio stand. Let's have a Wedlock stand. He was actually more famous than John Attio, although obviously people remember John Attio because he was much closer in time. And said, yeah, fine. And so they did. And so that's great. I mean, we in the family, we're so proud of that. They even named a little road over the back, Wedlock's Way, but the sign disappeared, so I'm wondering which of my cousins has got it adorning his lounge now.
Over the years, City has usually finished higher in the league than Rovers. But let's put it this way, they've both been robbed of huge success. You might have thought they'd have bonded in shared adversary, but not a bit of it.
Why did you choose City?
It's because my family was Rovers, so I thought I'd go the other way.
Can I ask you this very tricky question then?
Go on.
Would you ever consider switching to Bristol Rovers?
No way.
Never. Never, ever, ever.
Are you only a City man, or would you give a cheer for Rovers too?
Not a chance.
How many years do you think you're going to support Bristol City for?
All my life. All my life. City till I die. City till I die. Bristol City!
Cheers, folks. They say the opposite at the Memorial Stadium. Our bus trip takes us from Ashton Gate to a place just up the road. We're heading into the old industrial heartland of the city to meet the people who've come to define Bristol. If you want a barrow load of good humour and the biggest welcome going, then the place to be is Bedminster.
Grab it up quick and grab it up fast, Wallstock snake.
Whether shopping or working, there's usually a cheerful word and a laugh. People here are straightforward and hardworking. In fact, Bristol's motto, virtute et industrial, could have been written for this place.
Oh, we be Bristol kiddies, we comes from Bristol City, where all the blokes is handsome and all the birds is pretty. We proud of our own town, it never gets we down, and we got a little motto what we sings up Amsterdam. Oh, virtue at industrial, 3 cheers for Noversale. If the city don't win Saturday, perhaps the Rovers will. Virtue at industrial, shout it to the neighbours. Virtue at industrial, and CD down to Labour.
There may not be a lot of wealth here. The richness is in the Bemmy people.
What do you think about Bedminster?
Lovely. Lovely.
What's nice about Bedminster?
Well, there's more shops, there's more variety. That's what I like about it.
Great, it's all down-to-earth people. Everybody likes, everybody's always smiling, having it like they'll stop to have a talk with you.
I don't spend Bedminster very much.
What's the best bit?
People down here, and there's a lot of people down here.
Definitely Bristol, especially Bedminster and Tottenham people are really friendly. They are very, very friendly.
Yeah, they're great. A lot of the older ones as well. The Bemmy people, as they say.
The Bemmy people?
The Bemmy people, yeah.
What do you think of the people who live in Bedminster?
They're all right. I've got a lot of friends. And keep me going, I go to bingo. Not true.
Well, you need a break from hard work. The area is shaped by the old Wills tobacco factory, which once employed thousands. Get a job at Wills and it's a job for life, they used to say. Free fags too, if you serve your time. And at the other end of the street, Robinson's, the packaging people. Both these industries are pretty much gone now, and the pay packets have disappeared with them.
People round here have got the reputation for being big-hearted, and it's still a close-knit community because many families used to work together, often in the Wills factory behind me. It's also home of that amazing dialect, Bristolese. Can you give us a bit of the Bristol accent?
How best are you getting on?
How best are you getting on?
How busy, you alright?
I'm alright, you alright?
Not too bad.
So you haven't got much of a Bristol accent, have you?
I'm done. Well, I'm Bristolian. Born and bred here.
Can you do a Bristol accent?
No.
No, I don't think I'll be able to do.
Oh yeah, Bristol.
Yeah. What's the best way to speak Bristol, do you reckon?
I don't. Bristol, isn't it? Bristol. You don't. Yeah. After about 10 points of black for like, yeah.
You can't see as well as you just can. I don't know, as you tell us that, didn't you?
What does that mean?
I don't ask me. That's a Bristolian accent, that's what I know.
Just do it one more time.
You can't see as well as you first can.
Virtue that industrial, shout it to the neighbour. Virtue that industrial, and CD down to Labour.
With so much industry moving into this area in the late 19th century, they needed houses for the workers. But of course, this part of Bristol is extremely hilly, and so they ended up building houses on these crazy angles. I mean, going out for a walk, not so much a bit of light exercise as mountaineering.
Yes, you need your crampons to navigate the south ascent of Vale Street in Totterdown. Up past First Base and on, looking for shelter. Mind you, not everyone could afford to live here these days. It's become trendy and prices are steep. The summit still seems far away. Put your head down and dig in for the final push to the top. If I had a flag, I would plant it. Mind you, the Smiths have conquered this peak before many times. They've lived in this corner house for years, but these days rely on the car.
I don't ever go down these hills. There's always a car at the top of the hill and going off shopping. They don't make any difference to me whatsoever. But I feel sorry for the people that live on here, because you see them puffing and panting sometimes. You know, I don't know, you know.
Yeah, basically when I was a kid it was great fun living here because we 11, 12 racing push bikes up and down here. I couldn't do it now, but I mean we used to ride down, charge down there and then charge back up. It's the steepest hill, as far as I know, in Britain with houses on both sides of it. When you get to the bottom, on the right hand side, it's quite lethal. If you try going down there with a car, you would really get stuck. The nose would dig right in.
In the winter time you have to be careful as regards slippery. Down this hill was quite steep. You have to make sure you always had sand and salt.
What's it like living in such a hilly area?
Beautiful. I wouldn't live anywhere else. Because it's, you look over that side, you can see all around Bristol, look over that side, everywhere. Beautiful. I wouldn't change anything.
So although popping to the shops is a bit like a trip up Everest, it's worth it. Just watch your step on the way down. Our ride is taking us on to one of the most fascinating parts of the city, to an area that was once home to the wealthy merchants, but then became a home from home to many new arrivals.
The bus has brought us to Portland Square in St Paul's. This is the multicultural heart of Bristol. In the 1950s and 60s, thousands of people came here to start a new life from the West Indies. And every year the area bursts into life as people celebrate their roots with carnival.
It's now become a huge event and a fixture in the Bristol calendar. Loads of children get involved, and it's a way to join together, have fun, learn about different cultures. This is a Bristol that our ancestors would never have imagined. Integration hasn't always been easy, but these days people of goodwill mix and get on, and that's what this day is all about. It's good to chill too. In the back streets, the warm air throbs gently with reggae, and delicious cooking smells waft from 100 stores, mixing with all the other exotic aromas of the Caribbean. People come here from all over Bristol and well beyond to enjoy the biggest street party outside of London.
Well, I don't live in St. Paul's, but I do like to come down here. It's very lovely, and you get to meet everybody that you haven't seen for donkey's ears. So it's absolutely wonderful.
In St. Paul's, we all live together, a happy bunch, and we enjoy life.
It's fantastic, and that's why I want to book the whole waking off, especially for this kind of...
I love it, and I hope it go on for a long time.
It brings a lot of people together, every nationality, a lot of people together, and when the sun's out like this, it just brings more people out.
Everybody from different culture is sharing the atmosphere of enjoyment, enrichment, fulfillment for the day. And if you look around today and see the amount of people that is in the area, it's such a very happy atmosphere.
It's not just coconut in there. No, there's a bit of white rum.
Yes, a bit of rum, sunshine and a crowd, and the party goes on and on. And this is where it all started, the bridge around which a community called Bristol grew. A lot of reminders of Bristol's past are still here, even if they have been turned into homes. So we rumble along the cobbles of King Street, past the old pubs and England's oldest working theatre, and on to the curiously named Landogger Trow. They've been drinking here for 400 years. Even the pirate, Blackbeard, probably propped up the bar. And opposite, another local institution, the Old Duke, centre of the city's jazz. Here you can listen to musicians like the Seven Jazzmen, so relaxed they can have a beer on the job and still produce faultless rhythms. The great thing about this music is that it unites. Everybody swings to it, because that's jazz.
And on that note, this is where our tour of the city has to end. Just a few words of warning though about Bristol. A lot of people come here to work or to study and they never leave. It's that sort of place.